A great headshot or profile picture tells a story about the person you're photographing without having to use any words. There should be enough details in the image to tell the viewer everything they need to know. The style you choose to shoot, the mood of your model, the background, composition and wardrobe choices will all have a subtle impact on the final outcome. The more control you have over these details, the greater impact your image will have. Let's take a look at these factors in more detail. For many years now, the gold standard for headshots has been a neutral grey, and that's because it works with most skin tones. It's not overpowering the image and it's not detracting from the image, and it's good. It's a good color across the board. What you want to think about is this background detracting from my model or enhancing their features? And so you can see here that the neutral grey looks pretty good. What if I was to darken that background and make it like a dark black? That works as well, and our model still looks good, but the image overall now looks really heavy. What if I go the other way and have a background that's white and bright? And white is also a background that's used a lot in headshots, but it's not for everyone. So you can see that like a light grey looks really good, and often light grey can look lovely and is associated with higher end brands. And as I go brighter and brighter and brighter on this image, you can see that the background now is starting to fight with our model. When we're looking at an image, our eyes naturally go to the brightest part of the frame. And so you can see in this image, having a bright white background means that the first place my eyes go when I look at this image is to the background and then to the model. So the background is fighting for attention and taking attention from the model. So that's something you don't want to do. So if you're going to be using a white background, you're probably better off going with something like a lighter grey or a softer tone that doesn't fight with the model. So something around there for this image, I think works well. The next thing you want to think about is the colour of the clothing that your model's wearing. This can have a huge impact on how their skin tone looks and also how their eyes look. So here my model's wearing a purple shirt, and I want to show you the difference in like how the different shades of that color, so we can go a lot darker. Have a look at what happens to his skin tone when he's wearing a black shirt. Can you see how it suddenly he loses that glow in his features, and it's not nearly as flattering. Black sucks the life out of the skin tone, and it just makes the whole image look really flat. If we change the color of the shirt, you can see that there are certain colors where he looks better and other colors where it just doesn't work for his skin tone. I think green for someone with blue eyes looks really good, and you just watch his eyes and watch how they either pop or more or less, and also you want to be looking at the skin tone. So what I tend to do before I shoot is I get the model to try on all the clothes. That's a good colour for this particular model. It really makes his eyes pop and it complements his skin tone. So I think someone with this sort of complexion does look great in blue tones and green tones, and I'd have him in this colour. I think that looks the best. So you can see the colour choice makes a huge difference. Look at the difference there with that yellow. It just looks, it does nothing for this person's skin tone. at all. Whereas nor does the red. It kind of now brings out the red colouring in his skin. But blue looks really good. The colour of the wardrobe has a big impact on how your model is perceived, and so does the style of the wardrobe, so what they're actually wearing. So you want clothes that at first glance tell a story about the person. So a blue shirt is good for, say, a health professional or someone in the corporate industry. But what if I put this same model in a leather jacket? Now suddenly this headshot, at first glance, we're no longer thinking corporate, we're thinking maybe more creative sector, acting or music, just by changing the blue shirt to a leather jacket. And you can also, if we change to a tuxedo, again, the way this model is now perceived has completely changed. So wardrobe choice is something that you also need to think about when you're planning out your headshots, because it's going to have a huge impact on how your model is perceived. The next factor that I want you to consider is the style that you shoot your background in. Now, the background is there to support your model. It shouldn't overpower your model, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a block color. You can have great headshots that are photographed in a open background, and it gives them a more lifestyle-y feel, and I think it gives it a lot more life. So often a lot of photographers will choose a park as a backdrop. Now what you want is a background that is supporting your model but doesn't overpower them. So let's just get him back into his blue shirt. So often photographers will take their models out to a park, which makes a lovely background, but the problem with this background here is there's too much detail, and so when you're looking at this image, you don't know where to look first. So I think a good headshot needs to have your model as the hero of the shot, and the background supports that. So it's a good idea to shoot in a way that you have your background is blurred out of focus. So you can see the difference that if I shoot this background with some blur, as the background becomes blurrier, you can see that it's not as overwhelming to look at this image. There is much less detail there in the background, and suddenly our model becomes the hero of the frame. He's not having to fight the background for attention. Our eyes go straight to the model. Let's have a look at another example. So brick walls are often popular to photograph headshots against. So you can see the brick wall, very sharp, and there's just a lot going on. There is the diagonal, the horizontals and the verticals of the bricks, the texture of the bricks, and even the saturation of the background. It's just such a bright color that my eyes are going to the background first rather than to the model. But just by shooting in a way that the background is a lot softer in focus, it's slightly out of focus, brings the attention back to the model, and now the background is there to support the model. It's secondary to the model, and it makes a huge difference to how we view this image. The next important factor in a headshot or profile image is the position of your model in the frame. Now, by default, many photographers will position their model in the center of the frame, and generally the eyes are dead center as well. And this is because most people learn to focus from the center of the frame because that's where the camera focuses when you're shooting in automatic, and they won't move their model around because it's too hard to focus on the eyes. The problem with this is that when you've got your model smack dab in the middle of the frame like this, it doesn't allow movement or flow of your image. So when a person looks at an image, the first thing they'll look at, because we're human and we are conditioned to look at faces, is we will look at the face first and then we're going to move around the image. The reason this is important is because you want to have eyes on your image for as long as possible. The longer someone looks at an image, the more they're going to like that image. So the more time they spend looking at the image, the more time they have to get attached to that image. So you want to do everything in your power to use composition to help you get eyeballs on your images for longer. So one of the simplest ways to do this is to have some empty space in your image and also to frame the image so the eyes sit in the top third of the frame. So this image here, what I would do is move him across quite a bit and have him over to one side. So now when the viewer is looking at the image, the first place they're going to look is the eyes, and then they're going to look at the empty space. Now, if you're marketing your headshots, this is a great opportunity to use that empty space to put your text, and also the person that you're taking the photo of can use that empty space for text as well. So as well as having the image moved across to the left, you want to be having it about a third of the way in. And now I want the eyes to sit rather in the top third of the frame. I think that visually it just looks a lot better. All right, so something like that looks a lot better and has more flow, and you can even increase the size of the image. We can zoom in, fill the frame. Okay, and there's our model. So in terms of focusing in a situation like that, let's bring our overlay back. So here's our center. If you learn to manually move your focus points, you can move them across, up, and always focus on the eyes. So it doesn't limit you if you can learn to move your focus points, and that's in the Get Off Auto course, covers this in great detail, how to move the focus points. This gives you a lot more leeway when you're shooting your portrait. So you're still focusing on the eyes, but we have the eyes positioned in the top third of the frame, and you're going to have your model a third of the way in so that you've got some nice negative space in the image, and the image overall now has a lot more flow. So you've got flow coming up from the top, and then you've got all this lovely empty space, and it just creates a far more interesting composition than having it smack dab in the center. All right, so let's bring everything that we've learnt together into a case study. So on the screen now we have Brad. Brad is a chiropractor. So how would we choose, what's the thought process behind choosing the right location and the right wardrobe for Brad's portrait? So the first thing I do whenever I have someone wanting a headshot is I think about what it is that they want to convey in their headshot. Now, Brad is a chiropractor. So what are the qualities of a good chiropractor? So it might be something like he's professional, trustworthy, has empathy, is caring, warmth, and you want a chiropractor that is experienced as well. So, and what is it that Brad does? Brad helps people heal back or neck pain without surgery. So they're the kind of things that we want to say. The things that we don't want to convey in this headshot are things like you don't want a chiropractor that appears to be brash or arrogant or too cool or uncaring or a risk taker. So let's have a look at how changing the wardrobe is going to affect how Brad is perceived in the image. So if we were to change the blue shirt to, say, a leather jacket, if you look at a leather jacket, what kind of visual cues does a leather jacket give? So some people looking at a leather jacket, it's more often associated with someone who's maybe a musician or someone in the creative arts. It's not really associated with someone that works in the medical industry. So leather jacket could be associated with someone who rides a motorbike and then that's often associated with someone who's a risk taker. What if we try and change the leather jacket to, say, a tuxedo? Again, it's sending the wrong message. So tuxedo often associated with socializing or someone who is into going to parties or maybe a playboy, and again it's sending the wrong message. So I think for something like Brad, who works as a chiropractor, you want to show him as someone who is professional and reliable. So I think in this example the best bet is to go with the blue shirt. And next level with the blue shirt is it works beautifully for Brad's complexion, and also the shirt has a professional look to it. So we've got Brad in the right combination now, and it's sending the right message for his headshot. Now we want to look at a background that helps support that. So we could choose something like the countryside, and again, green often associated with health, that could work, and we know that green background was a bit too busy on the eyes, so we might change that and blur the background out, and that works well. What if we change the background and let's say that Brad says, I want to look successful, I want Vegas as a background. Can you see how that changes the message that the image is sending just by changing the background? So suddenly the background is clashing with Brad's image as a caring medical professional. So it's really important that you choose the right background that supports the message that you're trying to sell. And so if Brad was the kind of guy that watched a lot of infomercials late at night, and he knew that, like, well, I know that when I see a lot of entrepreneurs, they're often shown with their flashy car in the background. So a sports car at first glance does say successful, but it's sending the wrong message for someone that is a health professional. But if we wanted to show Brad to be, say, he worked as a poker player and that was his image, then maybe the sports car works as a background, and then something like the tuxedo works as well in creating Brad's image as a playboy poker player who is very successful. So you can see how the visual cues work, but they have to work for the profession that you're trying to sell. So this background obviously doesn't work selling Brad as a chiropractor. So we go back to maybe a plain background, or another option, and we'll get him out of the tuxedo and back into the blue shirt. So the green background looks good. Again, it says caring, professional, and green is a great colour if you want to do something more lifestyle-y for Brad. Another option is to use an interior, say a Brad's office. And again, in this situation, shooting the background as sharp as Brad, the background is fighting. While it supports what he does, caring medical profession, you've got the beds and the that medical background, that works, but there's too much going on. So if we throw that out of focus, we've got now a background that works a lot better for Brad. So we've got him in the blue shirt, works for his skin tone. It also works for his profession, with a background that helps sell what he does. So at first glance, there are enough visual cues in this image to say, here's Brad, and he works in the medical field.